almost no water in them, which is just fantastic. And so you can ferment down to the degree of sweetness that you want to be left with, and have the mead peter out on its own, and not have to worry about back sweetening. And that's my preferred method of doing it. The great thing is then all of that integrated character is set to start aging and blending and mellowing together as soon as you're done with the primary fermentation. So yeah, I prefer to do it that way. That's my preferred approach.
Okay. And then we had somebody else ask, and this guy actually called in before the show started. He did. I think he was time offset or something, but he was talking about how no matter how well he racks, no matter how well he clears his meads, there's always some stuff that settles to the bottom, and was wondering, because your meads are always so crystal clear, do you filter?
We don't. We don't own a piece of filtration equipment, and to be honest with you, we have had meads that we've made that have, still, even though we perceived of them as clear when we bottled them, they have still thrown sediments at the bottom of the bottles. And Red Agnes is truly unique. The Red Agnes, I mean, there's something about the fruit solids in red currants that has a really unique way that its sediment works, and it's almost like a gelatin, but we didn't find that mead, and it is clear, and you have to pour carefully and decant it the same way you would with any aged Italian or French or many California wines, just because it's eventually some of those fruit solids they're gonna sediment their way out, and you may want to decant it if you're going to serve it all the same night, or just pour slowly and carefully if you're going to try and put the cork back in it and stick it back in the fridge. But no, we don't filter. We have found some of our products in the past, and we've used, depending on which mead it is. Some we find some things fine better with bentonite, and some things fine better with sparkleoid. But we try to avoid that if we can at all. Certain things we did some test batching on, like for example pineapple. We found that they just won't clear. If you've got it 2 years and you're a home mead maker, once again, where you guys have us over a barrel, as it were. If you've got 2 years to let it sit there in your basement and age, and you don't need to get that out and make some people happy with it, then yeah, that's time is your best friend. But if you need to get it cleared up, our approach has been to go with finding agents.
Well, and that raises the question of what Joel says dropped out on him just as we were about to ask him about Vegemite. Well, Joel, tell him what
I loved your Vegemite. I love the Vegemite. There is very little left at this point, and it is salty and delicious. And yes, I'm continuing to eat it on toast, although it's good on biscuits too, by the way.
There we go. Joel will be happy now. But yeah, I mean, going back to the filter versus not filter thing, and and the fact that of course when you go commercial, time is your is your enemy. You can't just let it sit forever. I know that there is a couple of different schools on seeing commercial meads out there that are having fallout. That you do find a little bit of collection at the bottom. What's your thoughts on that? Because I mean, it seems like from what you were saying that's just kind of an inevitability sometimes.
Well, it's an inevitability in many of the finest wines in the world. You can if you can buy a $12,000 bottle of Henri Jaillard Burgundy, and after it's been in your basement for a year, you notice that there's a sediment in the bottle. No one is complaining about that.
Yeah.
No one is complaining about a sediment in. I mean, I have many bottles of Bordeaux and Burgundy and Italian wine in my basement that have sediment in them, and the same thing is true with magnificent lambics that I've bought. And I
love lambics.
I love lambics.
Yeah,
and
lambics are awesome.
Okay, so there's going to be a little sediment in there because you left something in there.
Yeah.
Okay, leave it in there.
Yeah.
I want it in there. I don't want you to filter it out so that, in a year I've got this beautifully clear bottle that doesn't have the advantage of that. I mean, we have a thing at Schramm's Mead that we call a rescue. And when you're running a bottling process, that means you're bottling off 2,000 liters of mead.
That's a lot of
and
mead.
That's a lot of mead. It's not compared to what huge wine producers make, it's not a lot of mead. But compared to the amounts of mead I was making 5 years ago, it just seems like a buttload, right?
I'd say that's several buttloads, but yeah.
Yes. Metric
buttload.
Metric buttloads, yeah.
Yes.
Which is a thing.
So we bottle this off, and it's aged now for let's just say 3 or 4 months, and it's essentially clear. And there are 2 ports on the bottom of the tank. There's a racking port, and there is a total discharge port. If we bottle out of the racking port in this 2,000 liter tank, there's going to be about 200 liters of product that's left at the bottom of that tank. And even though it's aged for 3 or 4 months, there's going to be a bunch of sediment in that. And we're not going to bottle that when we do our regular bottling run, right? That mead's going to get run off into carboys or smaller tanks and stored again for another few months. And if after a month or two it looks like it's in good shape, it can be bottled or kegged for us to serve at the tasting room.
Okay.
Right. Some of those rescues, as we call them, are the most delicious mead in the batch because they've been sitting down there next to the fruit salads for longer than any of the rest of the mead, which felt clear.
Yeah.
They're sitting down there next to the deliciousness for a long time, and it becomes really apparent to you after you've done this a few times that, whoa, yeah, those rescues are some of the best mead in the whole batch. Now, we're delighted to serve that to people if they come into the tasting room and they want to order a glass. That's just, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, it's fantastic because it's been sitting there next to that sediment. And I don't want to say to people, yeah, you know what, we're gonna filter all that sediment out there so that you get a clear bottle. We'd rather have you have a clear bottle than one that tastes as good as it possibly can.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also of the mind. I mean, I find it remarkable. A huge portion of our customer base are also craft beer aficionados. And right now, what's going on in pale ales and fresh ales and cask ales is the delivery of beer that's almost viewed negatively if it is clear.
Yeah.
And the best stuff looks like it was, wasn't even strained through a sock. It looks like it was stirred up yesterday.
Well, one of the best ciders I've ever had was when I was in Great Britain. We were in Ottery St. Mary, which is down in the direction of Penzance. It's maybe an hour north of Penzance. And it's this little bitty town down the road from where Sir Walter Raleigh grew up. It's where Cromwell kind of got kicked things off, or I mean, there was a lot of Cromwell activity around. There's a lot of history in this place, and this was just an old town inn. And in fact, one of their claims to fame was that the inn's been there since Cromwell came through. I mean, literally. And they had we walked in and we were waiting for a table and sitting at the bar, and there was this nasty old moss-covered barrel behind the bar sitting up on the counter. And I mean, it's old. This was an old barrel. This barrel had to be older than me. Easy, you know. And they're like, so what do you have to drink? And my girlfriend, who I love to pieces, but she was a creature of habit, was drinking Black and Tans all the way across the country. So she's like getting her Guinness, and I'm like, look, we can get Guinness at home. Drink something we can't get at home. So I'm like, what's in that barrel? And he says, oh, that's some cider that we get from the guy down the road. I said, give me a glass of that. This stuff had chunks in it. I mean, it was, you know, if you just went purely on appearance, you would have been like, oh no, thank you very much. I'll have a Guinness, you know. But I was like, no, man, that looks interesting, and I drank it, and oh my God, it was so rich and full of flavor and had all this texture. I mean, literally, and you know, I mean, but it was just so amazing. And you know, ever since then, I've wondered at I mean, in competitions, we fault it if it's not crystal clear. You know, and I get that that's the way competitions are set up, but I wonder how much of that's carried over into the commercial world to make people think that it has to be that way to be good, to be right, when obviously that's not always the case.
Well, I think there's a point that you cross over in a lot of these beverages where you have to take the winemakers or the cider makers or the mead makers' word for it that this is really good like this.
Yeah.
And we could change it for the sake of appearance, but I mean, you can eat Red Delicious apples too if you want.
Yeah. No, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Are we in this game for how this looks? And for me, I like it to look pretty, but first and foremost, I want it to be delicious. And there are times with, you know, especially with the Black Agnes, for example, that has that I mean, it's just got obscene amounts of fruit in it. It's just got so much fruit in it that it's going to be almost impossible, or it's going to require levels of patience that, you know, that we don't have either gustatorially or financially right now.
Yeah.
To have it be the kind of clear that we want, that, you know, that sort of aesthetic demands.
Yeah.
And I'm just like I said, I'm not as obsessed with the aesthetic as I am with the olfactory and the flavor.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Organoleptic.
you've always been about the, you know, the taste and the smell. That as long as I've known you, it's been that, you know, I mean, even when I was learning from you as a judge, it wasn't about what does it look like. It was about what does it taste like? What does it smell like? And that, I think, is really a thing for commercial and home mead makers out there to think about is, do you want, I mean, it's not that you can't have pretty and have amazing taste and smell, but oftentimes in order to get that peak level olfactory and you know, gustatory pleasure from the mead, that sometimes you have to let go of the perfection of appearance in order to have the perfection of everything else.
I'm willing to.
Yeah.
I'd love it. I'd love it to be clear in every instance, and I'd love there to never be any sediment in the bottle. But
Doesn't work that way.
well, I'm
You're not going to sacrifice taste for it.
Yeah.
I'm I'm maybe I will change philosophically. Right now, I'm opposed to filtration.